Hello and welcome to this episode of Packet Tracer. In this episode we want to talk about the environment dialog window and the edit mode. Let's go to the environment dialog window. Here I am in the environment dialog window. Let me resize it so you can see everything properly. Now this is the edit mode. If I go to the edit mode, the two main themes that we have in here is the timescale, the simulation timescale, and the keyframe graphs. So the simulation timescale determines how fast the simulation should evaluate time. For example, if I select 1 second is equal to 30 minutes of simulated time, that means our environment would run 30 times faster, and this is by default. I can change this, of course, and of course we can make it, for example, to make 2 minutes equivalent of 30 minutes of simulated time. The simulation time evaluates the environment based on the timescale settings and interpolates in between. So a rule of thumb is to set your timescale to the smallest value between keyframes. For example, if your smallest keyframe spacing is about 15 minutes, your timescale should also be 1 second in real time. That is equivalent to 15 minutes of simulated time. And also recall that the environment time, this environment time is different and decoupled from the network simulation time, and this is a modeling limitation because the environment time moves much faster than the network time. The next thing that we have is the keyframe graph, and keyframe graph is one of the ways to affect the environment. The graph is set to a 24-hour cycle from 00 to 23:29. As you can see, the last minute is 23:59. That is the last minute, and the first minute is 00. And this keyframe graph will continuously loop between these times. And there's a few ways to manipulate the environment keyframe graph. For example, if certain environment variables are not shown, then if I click on any of them, then those environment variables will be shown. As you can see, I added heat. Let's remove heat. Let's remove sunlight. Put some rain in here, for example. Put ozone in here. Ozone is 0. Smoke, and this is also almost 0. And as you can see, this way we can manipulate the keyframe graph. We can also add an environment keyframe. For example, around here I want to add a keyframe, and now as you can see, if I double click on part of this graph, I can add a keyframe, and then I can move this keyframe to change the values on the keyframe graph. If I double click on the keyframe once again, it will be disappeared and it will be gone. And as we said before, the way to change the value of the keyframe is to drag it around the screen, or we can also change the value using this box. Let's make it 60, and as you can see, the value will change to 60. If I grab one of the keyframes and I drag it to the top of the graph in here, then the higher bound of the graph will change to a higher value, and this is one of the ways we can change the higher value, the higher bound of the graph. Last thing we want to talk about is this time snap. So the time snap, by default, the time axis snaps at every 60 minutes. As you can see, I have 60 minutes in here, and this is 12 a.m. and then this is 1 a.m. and the time snap is every 60 minutes. Now I can change this to be 30 minutes so there is more clarity on the graph. Now this way we can manipulate the time snap here on the graph based on the time snaps of 30 minutes, 60 minutes and 15 minutes. Here we have the value snap, and the value snap, as you can see, this axis is the value snap, and it snaps for every one step at a time. We can make it 10 or we can make it 100, and basically if our value is too small, then we need to fine grain and control these snaps so that the value can be shown properly on the graph. And also the same way, time snap will also make the graph more accurate or more less accurate as well. That's it for this episode, everyone. I hope this has been informative for you, and I would like to see you in the next episodes where we will be talking about environments in more detail. Stay tuned.